So good afternoon, everybody. So I asked my panelists to talk about what's new and exciting in their company. I'm fairly certain I know for Hugh and Mikkel what they're going to talk about. Not sure what Jose and Bob are going to talk about, but I need to ask you two a question first, Mikkel and Hugh. Do I need to read a forward-looking statement, a cautionary statement to the audience first before you guys talk?
Nope.
Okay, good. So let's start with you, Bob. Just 2 minutes. What's going on with Crowley and offshore wind?
Thanks, Charlie. So offshore wind, lots going on in the Crowley organization right now. We recently formed a new business unit. We're calling it Wind Services. And we're really focused on 5 primary areas of business. We're looking at terminals. And really, if you think about it, terminals are that nexus point for where all of the work is going to emanate from for these wind parks. So we're really focused on both developing and operating in these spaces. Obviously, with the marine background that Crowley has, we're very focused on marine transportation, both tugs, barges, and quite frankly, some of the specialty equipment that I think we're going to need in this industry if it's going to move forward at the pace that we hope it does. We're also looking at construction services, not from a tier 1 perspective. We don't want to be WTIV owners, but we want to support those companies and really be that supplier of choice for the tier 2 construction services. And then operations and maintenance. That's really going to be that annuity that goes on for 10, 15, 20 years. And you saw it was exciting. We talked about the SOV that we won with Siemens Gamesa, and that's really that step forward in that operations and maintenance space.
That's the one that's a JV with SVOC?
With SVOC, absolutely. Yeah.
Jose, please.
Well, pleased to be here. And for those of you who are not familiar with NOV, we are a provider of technology and equipment to the global energy industry. And historically, most people have known us as primarily being a supplier to the folks that were on the prior panel in the offshore drilling space. But as has been touched on in a couple of the prior panels, we saw a while ago that our skill set, our mindset to the global energy space is equally applicable to the renewable energy space. And what I mean by that is our mission in life for the last 150 plus years has been all about making the production and availability of energy resources around the world better and more efficient. And so, what we see in the offshore wind space and a large part of the broader renewable space is the need to dramatically improve the efficiencies and economics of providing renewables as we sort of go through the energy transition process. And so we saw a great opportunity to translate our skill set related to being able to provide large equipment and machinery that can operate very effectively and efficiently in harsh weather offshore environments, and began focusing our efforts in the offshore wind space. And so today, as we sit here, roughly about 5% of our revenue is coming from sort of energy transition and renewable space, with the vast majority of that coming from supplying some of the folks that are here on the panel. So thank you.
Mikkel?
Yes, so I represent Cadeler. We are a company that owns these jackups that install both the turbines and the foundations. And we've been doing that since 2012, where we delivered the vessels that we have on the water today with NOV equipment, by the way. So we have been around for a long time, and I think the most interesting piece of news for lately was that on Friday last week we announced that we have entered into a business combination agreement with these guys to my right, where we are aiming to combine the companies to form a real strong company to support our clients in the industry with the massive task we have ahead of us. So we are looking forward to engage in that process now until end of the year, where we will be working as one entity after that.
I'm Hugh Baker, and I'm from Eneti. Eneti is, along with Cadeler, is one of the large independent owners of wind turbine installation vessels. We own 5 vessels that are on the water. 2 of them are very, very high specification vessels. that are involved in offshore wind installation, and we have 3 sort of non-core vessels that are involved in operations and maintenance, mainly operations and maintenance. And in addition to that, we have a couple of very high specification new buildings, and along with Cadeler, I think we're going to create a truly remarkable fleet of state-of-the-art assets. And we have an incredibly dedicated team, an experienced team of professionals who have been installing wind turbines for a very long time. And I think combining that with the Cadeler team and the proposed combination is just going to make a really compelling and really dynamic and interesting company.
So of the order book, which is 13-ish world non-Chinese, you two together have how much of that order book, WTIVs?
6.
6 of the 13?
We've got 2.
So 8 of the 13?
Oh, no,
Oh,
four,
sorry.
4 and 2.
Yeah.
4 and 2.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Jose, can I ask you, what do you focus on a particular part of the market, geographically or otherwise? What's the most exciting part of the offshore wind market for NOV?
Look, I guess I would say that, first of all, we're a global company. We operate in 62 countries around the world. And so we're not particularly focused on any one market environment. We're going to go where our customers need us most and help them providing solutions that are hopefully fit for purpose.
Well, you didn't talk about Gusto. I mean, isn't Gusto part of NOV now? Gusto?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Gusto is, MSC Gusto is part of NOV. Long, proud history in this space, and most of that operation is concentrated in Europe, which is where most of the business has been as of late. But one of the things that we're particularly excited about is, for this industry has been taking off, frankly, both in Europe and to a lesser extent in China, which isn't a market where I think any of us play to any meaningful degree. But as we sort of look out into the future, we're seeing more and more opportunities in other parts of the world, US, Southeast Asia, Australia, Latin America. We think all of those markets will be coming on really strong. And in terms of areas where we're focused, look, there's been a massive retooling of the fleet, right, of the wind installation fleet. And the need to access higher hub heights, to use the latest generation of technologies of wind turbines to drive more efficiencies from that standpoint has been driving an upgrade of the offshore wind installation fleet. And there's been a race to sort of keep up with where the turbine technology is going. And we've been very focused on helping our customers to be able to do that, not only just the heavier lift capacities and the higher heights, but also as a means of getting much more efficient in terms of what you can actually do with each wind installation vessel, right? So in terms of how much equipment you can carry on the vessel in order to do the installations as efficiently as possible. In addition to just continuing to optimize and increase the size of the offshore wind installation vessels, we're also getting much more focused on the componentry that goes into providing other areas of support. We have a concept called the Songhest, which is Norwegian for seahorse, which is specifically designed for really optimizing the installation of the blades on a turbine, which doesn't require one of the massive new WTIVs. So doing that more effectively. Also, some other componentry for some of the supply deck
You're trying to take a market away from Cadeler and Eneti?
We're not trying to take the market away at all. We're trying to support them with what the industry is trying to do, which is get more efficient and make the production of power and energy more efficient, more affordable for consumers. And lastly, I'll mention, we're also very focused on the next set of opportunities that is coming related to the floating offshore wind space. And I'm sure we'll talk more about that. But that's something that, as you heard earlier today, is more of a later 2020s and early 2030s type build out, but a large opportunity set that we as an organization are excited about.
Great. Bob, obviously Crowley is focused on the US market. You are well aware that developers are seeking repricing of their electricity procurement agreements with the various states. Is that something to be concerned about? I mean, is that something Crowley's concerned about?
I go back to what Todd said a couple panels ago. This is one of those hiccups that I think he was referring to. In order to make the economics of these projects work, you need a decent PPA. And I think what these developers are seeing is the economics of the projects are weak, and then their ability to finance them becomes harder and harder. So what I think it does is it's going to change the trajectory of the market, where if you had asked me that question a year ago, maybe 18 months ago, I'd have said you've probably got to steady, up into the right curve over the next decade, at least 5 years. I think what you're going to see now is for the next 4 or 5 years, a bit of a bathtub curve. You're going to see 24 is going to be strong because those projects are already committed and moving, and then the execution phase. And then these rebids are going to cause a bit of a bathtub, and they're going to dip. But I think we come out 27, 28 extremely strong, where developers have strong PPAs and good project economics. And then I think you start to see it really take off. And then when you get into 2030, to your point earlier, floating wind is really going to start to take hold. You'll see it off the West Coast. You'll start to see it come down through the Gulf of Maine. So it's pretty exciting. It's just one of those hiccups that I think we're going to have to deal with in this industry for a little while.
Yep. Mikkel, Hugh, I don't know who wants to go first. I'd like to hear a little bit more about why you think a merger is a good idea, what the two companies hope to benefit, how they hope to benefit from that, how your shareholders will benefit. Hugh, why don't you go ahead?
I think firstly, I think our shareholders are going to benefit, and our customers are going to benefit as well. I think this is a classic win-win transaction because it's really very compelling. The strategic benefits of combining two really best-in-class companies is really compelling, and we're certainly going to create we're going to create a company that is bigger, and it's going to have the best assets in the business, and it's something that we're very proud of. And I think the eventual company that will come out of this is going to have it has a terrific fleet. It has terrific growth potential on the back of that fleet, and there are some obvious and real commercial and financial synergies that is going to create a world leader. And so I think Mikkel is going to talk about this, but he's going to be leading a company that is really it's going to be a phenomenal opportunity for all of our investors to benefit from the growth in offshore wind. And it's a very exciting market because offshore wind is a huge growth market, and the two companies sitting here next to each other are really the best in the offshore wind firmament. So we're really excited about it.
Mikkel?
Yeah, no, I think it's first and foremost, the company actually doesn't have many crossovers. So we are strong in different ways, and also we are represented in different parts of the projects, so to speak, in terms of geography and stuff like that. So it made a lot of sense to create a global player first and foremost, because the industry is going global. So to be able to support the clients on a global level has a lot of value. It's also something that the clients have actively been asking for, that they have bigger counterparts.
Yeah, you told me about that before, that it was just universally supported amongst your developers.
Yeah, and I would say that actually it's interesting because, of course, you always you think you're doing the right thing, but before you announce it and you can actually tell it to the world, you're a little bit anxious. How will the world receive this, right? But I think that how we have been received and with our clients, our suppliers, our investors, it's been really such a positive journey since Friday last week. I've had so many emails from clients, saying this is exactly what the industry needs, and this is what we have wanted for a long time. It makes the whole strategy they have in terms of combining portfolios of projects easier, because we are actually able to, some of the synergies we have pointed to synergies of more than 100 million euro a year. And some of that is also because we can actually right-size the right vessel for the right project. We can say this vessel will only be doing this type of turbine, and then you don't need to mop, demop, different sea fasting, all of this, And just in terms of sea fasting on a wind project, that represents 20% of our total carbon footprint on a project. So if you can just leave that sea fasting on board, don't need all these long mop, demop periods and all of that. It's just a big win-win for everybody.
Are you going to be listed?
Both in New York Stock Exchange and in Norway, yes.
Okay.
So the process is starting now with making the listing prospectus in the US as well.
Well, Hugh, you're the money guy on the panel. Where's the money coming from for these new builds and for the 13? We saw 13 more new builds the industry needs. Where's that money going to come from?
Well, firstly, in terms of the combination with Cadeler, Cadeler is fully financed. Eneti is about to be fully financed. We're completing our existing $436 million financing. And so the two companies are fully financed. But more importantly, on a wider level, what we've seen is that the banks and financial institutions are really supportive of the offshore wind industry. They're supportive of the individual companies, but they're very supportive of the wind industry. They want to lend into wind. And what we found and what we've done at Eneti is built a group of banks who are supporting us. And these are mainstream ship finance banks, but a lot of European banks. And we've got we're getting really strong support. And most of these wind projects are getting very strong support from the export credit agencies, which are the government agencies that support not only exports of vessels from China and from Korea, but also European equipment. So, are we getting offers of financing based on the amount of MSC Gusto equipment built in Holland from the Dutch Export Credit Agency? Yes. Is the Norwegian Export Credit Agency being very supportive about the Norwegian content in these new builds? Yes. Is Kexim K-Sure, the Korean ECAs, willing to step up and support us? Yes. Has Cadeler got extremely strong support from Sinosure and the Chinese export credit agencies? Yes. And these banks want to support the energy transition. A lot of them have a mandate to support the energy transition. So I think in terms of debt financing, it's definitely out there, and I don't want to use the word plentiful, but it's certainly, actually it is plentiful. I'm going to use that word. And the capital markets are also available. So I think it's the right companies are going to get their projects financed, and there is.
What is the current price of a WTIV? What's rough cost? China, right? I mean, China's where you're going to build one. Maybe Singapore.
It all depends on the specification, but I would say somewhere above 400 million, depending on what you are building and where you're building it. It's slightly more expensive in Korea than in China still. I think that in terms of the debt financing side, Hugh didn't want to say plentiful, then he did anyway, but I actually think it is plentiful, and I think that we have a few examples of that. One is we have just completed the debt financing of our 2 X-class vessels, 425 million euro. We were more than double oversubscribed on that. We had to scale the banks back 60%. In connection with the business combination agreement, we wanted to have a debt facility for the combined company ready, and we were able to get that credit approval underwritten in less than a week. We have banks that approach us with mezzanine facilities if they can get their name and logo on our vessels at very, very competitive prices. So I do think it's plentiful. It's of course then up to us to select the right ones and don't go into places where others have been. Be prudent about the debt that we take on the company, and that's certainly something we want to be the custodians of, that we run a prudent business that is not over-levered in any way. Because and the fact is we have been happy with the capital markets as well. They have been very, very open to us. We have done 3 private placements outside the IPO, and last year we did 2 of them, and the first one we closed more than double oversubscribed in 40 minutes, and the second one in 34 minutes, and also double subscribed. So I think that we have been in a good place, and I think it's important we continue to deliver. Then we will still have support both from banks and from the equity markets.
As we talked about in Oslo, there's a little bit of a movement, black to green, as we called it. From oil investments to green investments, and ESG figures into this, sort of a preference. Do you see that in your financing efforts?
Definitely. And the banks are open with this. They have signed the Poseidon Principles and they need to live up to them. And I think it's a challenge for most banks, and I don't think they want to stretch the targets and stuff like this because it's already a pretty big hurdle to overcome.
So Bob, I wanted to ask you about your joint venture a little bit. To me, the future of the U.S. Jones Act market has sort of always been foreign U.S. joint ventures, because the European companies have had the experience and the equipment and the people, and the American companies know the market and also have equipment and people. And you've done one of the principal joint ventures with SVOC that we already mentioned for an SOV. What do you think about your JV, and is that the future?
I think it is. You know, the way I think about this market and how companies are gonna find success is it's gonna be through partnerships, whether they're joint ventures, strategic supplier relationships. But I think it will be more difficult for folks to make money if everyone tries to go it alone. So developers, what I'm seeing is they're looking for companies to partner. Maybe somebody has a core competency in this space, and then someone's got a core competency over here. They're looking for a single solution. So if those companies can partner and come together, whether it's a JV, whether it's just a partnership, a handshake partnership where they go to market together, our customers are gonna win, and they're gonna have a better product in the end. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a way to drive the cost of electricity down, which starts with, everybody's got to do that. We saw that through the cycle in the onshore wind space. Cost of electricity was high, and it took years and years and years for folks to figure out the right recipe to drive cost out. And it really started with people working together and starting to put these partnerships together.
But is it only going to be in the SOV long-term contract area that the JV can work, or CTVs or other aspects of the market?
No, I think it could be in multiple aspects. And I think even from within Crowley, you're going to see over the next 3 to 6 months, we're going to announce multiple partnerships, some joint ventures, in areas that will allow us to grow and offer different solutions to our customers, whether it be in terminal spaces or in vessels or around labor and some of the training and the labor that's going to be needed for this space. Partnerships are going to be key. I think the SVOC Crowley partnership shows that we can find a way to make it work, and we're seeing success there. But I think we're going to see it pop up in many, many different spaces, not just the vessel space.
Jose, the turbine size keeps going up and up and up. Eventually, someone's going to ask for a vessel to put a turbine on top of the Empire State Building, and you're going to have to figure out the technology to do it. Have we reached sort of a plateau in that technology, a sort of a slowing down, 18 megawatts-ish, 15 to 18 being about the number for the foreseeable future, or is that going to keep going up?
Yeah, it's a really good question. We'll be interested in hearing from some of my colleagues and friends and customers here to the right in terms of what they're hearing and what they're saying. But look, we're not in the turbine manufacturing space, right? But we're a large global manufacturer, and from what we can see and what we can tell, there has been this race to get down the cost curve to provide that lower cost electricity that we're all focused on providing. And that's led to a rapid deployment of new generations of technology on the turbine space. And as a result, I think that what should have been a very profitable oligolistic, I can't pronounce the word today, market structure among the wind turbine manufacturers has been challenged. They've been beating each other up, and they have been recovering a good return on the investments they've made on each successive generation of technology. I think with where they've gotten to, there is a little bit of a pause that is taking place from an R&D standpoint, but we're also approaching, I think, some of the practical limits in terms of being able to handle, install some of this enormous equipment that is out there. So, I think, 20 megawatt turbines are coming. Don't know exactly where the practical limit is with what we see today. It's hard to imagine anything much bigger than that. 25 isn't out of the question, but there certainly are practical limitations to what you can do and install and operate effectively and efficiently.
Mikkel, Hugh, you want to comment on?
Yes, I am happy to comment. We are already above the 20 megawatt mark in terms of what we are bidding. So we believe certainly that will come. And if you ask me about my personal opinion, I think it will plateau somewhere between 22 and 28. So I'm not far off what Jose is saying. So I think that that's probably correct. There are still some unknowns in how fast it will go and all of that. Because of course, if you want to build scalability into the industry, you also need to agree some basis that actually allow the manufacturers to push out these turbines at greater numbers than they have done. But the fact that they will still grow somewhat, I'm pretty sure about that. And it makes sense as well. One of the biggest challenges in offshore wind at the moment is the grid connection. And the grid connection is a limiting factor to the outbuild. It's always covered under permitting issues. But actually, if you ask the grid operators, they say that 2027 is today and 28 is tomorrow, right? You cannot order a cable and get a grid connection in place. And this is where the whole power to X thing is now playing a different role, because if you could have an electrolyzer on the turbine of a certain size and then electrolyze on the turbine and then export in terms of hydrogen instead, then you don't really need the grid connection anymore, and you remove a limiting factor, a bottleneck. And we do see some projects also with that new type of technology where we are not exporting with power and cables anymore, but we are using different technology. So I think that there's a lot of new things coming, a lot of very interesting stuff, and we all probably work on R&D projects for bigger stuff.
Well, in some ways, the offshore wind industry, especially in the United States, everything is critical path. People ask, well, what's critical path? Well, everything. The people, the CTVs, the grid connection, the amount of electrical cable needed, everything is critical path.
Yeah, and actually, I would like to make that one comment. That's a really good point, I think, because I think that one of the real beauties of what we announced on Friday is really the fact that we can integrate two very strong teams together and ensure that we have the resources, because the software, that is one of the biggest limiting factors today. We see people that actually, so some of the OEMs, for example, they have vessels available for O&M, but they can't man them. They simply don't have enough manpower to man them, so they cannot go out and operate. And so the software part is something that has to be taken very, very serious.
Are you going to be focusing on any new markets in the combination, or focusing on existing markets, geographic markets?
I think we are in agreement in terms of what markets are relevant. We have said publicly that we think that the South American market is very interesting on top of what is already known.
USA, no, yes?
Not yet. I think the USA is an incredibly interesting market, but as you know, it has its own.
As long as you have the right lawyer, mind you. I mean, it's.
We Charlie, we do have the right lawyer, and I think it's the U.S. market is developing. It's sometimes, as we discussed, it's moved sideways a little bit, but I think that we all understand and believe that offshore wind is really going to take place and build in the U.S. In the next sort of 10 years, and I think that I'd be very unsurprised if the combined company wouldn't be part of that in some form. I think we're collectively, Cadeler has this amazing position in Europe. Eneti has been focusing on the very profitable Far East Asian markets over the last few years, and I think the combination really is really going to be able to develop new markets and really satisfy customers all over the world.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. I think that you have to look at every market, but there's also some, let's say, there are some delays in the U.S. market, so it's not an urgent thing. So it has to be evaluated carefully. There's a lot of risks.
Every market is going to have fits and spurts.
Yeah.
All the European markets had fits and spurts. We forget that, and you have to find the right moment and the right market.
True. When you have these assets, you need to look at pipelines. It's not single project level anymore. You need to ensure that they continue to work. And the European market at the moment is incredibly attractive because it is really pearls on the string. It's every week there's a new nation that is announcing some increased target. Denmark did it just here a couple of weeks ago, increased their targets from 3 to 14 before 2030, right? And easier permitting processes to that route. So I think that, there's a lot of good markets out there. And the growth, we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. So there will be much more coming.
So Bob, government financing, Title 11 is the term of art in the U.S. You guys going to be taking advantage of the U.S., what the U.S. government has to offer, or not, for vessels you build?
We are. Anytime the U.S. government has something to offer, we're going to take advantage of it. We absolutely are. And for the SOV and our joint venture, we're going for Title 11 financing. I think it's a great way to kickstart some low-cost debt into the market. So we are looking at that. We're also looking at other ways to generate capital to go after some of the financing of the vessels, including partnerships, to no surprise. So certainly, between the Title 11, I think
Strategic partnerships or private equity?
both, actually. I think both are going to be key to push some of this forward. The other thing that I think is helping, not just Title 11, but a lot of the IRA wording is giving us the ability to. It's different than what we saw.
You might want to say what the IRA. You might want to give a little background on that.
The Inflation Reduction Act, and it's been a way to provide subsidies from the government into where it's helping us in the offshore spaces into the shipping industry and the shipbuilders and these shipyards. So it's given us the opportunity to take the subsidies all the way back into manufacturing, which is something we haven't seen in the past. If you look at how the government did it in the onshore wind space, and I'm sure a lot of folks here have invested there as well, it really went back to the developers and to the ratepayers in most cases. What I like about what the government's done at this point is it's taken it right back to the manufacturers, which has given them the ability to really kind of kickstart their process and get things moving. So we need more of that, and I think it's going to be a combination of the two.
Good. Before we close, any questions from the audience? I do not. We're stupefying.
There's one down there. Oh.
Can you talk about how changing geopolitical risk is transforming the offshore wind? Is it a concern or an opportunity?
I think the main risk is not geopolitical. It's energy transition. I mean, I think the risk is not understanding and believing that energy transition is happening. And I think in the offshore wind industry, we're at the front end of believing in energy transition. No one around on this panel would be up here today if we didn't fundamentally believe that energy transition is happening. And I think we're all happy to be on the right side of that.
But there are political risks. This country in particular, if there's changeover in the next administration, the current administration is very foursquare in favor of offshore wind. The prior one was not.
If you say so, John.
But I think there are many different types of geopolitical risk. The one that we are facing now in Europe, because we have war in Europe at the moment, right? Ukraine and Russia. And if you look from our point of view, it has not altogether been bad. So I think it depends on what kind of geopolitical risk we are talking about. Are we talking China? Are we talking change of administration in the US? Are we talking Ukraine, Russia? What is it we are talking about? At the moment, I think energy security is on top of the agenda for everybody working in energy and in politics in Europe, and has certainly been sparking a development that nobody could see.
Right.
The reality is there's no votes in climate change yet. It's not really sexy enough because it doesn't happen fast enough. But an energy price that goes up triple, there's a lot of votes on that. So I think that we are in a. So for now it has been a positive. But I think anybody running a prudent company needs to have a plan in the drawer saying, what if this happens? What do we then do? Right. So yeah.
Yeah, and Charlie, if I could add. Look, I think, as we talked about, there will be fits and spurts along the way, and political risk is always a potential wrinkle that gets thrown into any industry at given periods of time. But the way we look at it is we focus on businesses and business opportunities to where there is a line of sight to an economic, profitable business at the end of the day without government subsidies. And while government subsidies and political regimes can be helpful, one of the things that we really like about the wind space in general are the economic potential associated with some of these projects. So I think over time, economics win out, and I think that's the path that
Go ahead,
we're on.
Bob.
Charlie, just to your point, one of the things that I touched on earlier was this bathtub curve that worries me over the next couple of years. And what as the administration changes over, depending on who comes in, if you're at the bottom of that bathtub curve, you're talking about renewable energy again, and you're talking about whether that's where we want to go from the energy transition or not. As you start to pull out of that bathtub curve, it becomes more of a discussion about jobs, right? And we saw that in the onshore wind space back in 2012, 2013, when PTC would run out, these production tax credits. It wasn't a discussion about whether or not wind was great for the country. It was what happens to the jobs that are going to disappear if we don't continue to put this production tax credit out there. So that's the thing that we really need to be concerned about over the next couple of years is the quicker we can come out of that bathtub curve, the quicker we stop talking about, is this a renewable energy discussion? Is this an energy transition discussion? And it's more about jobs and how do you make sure these companies can
Well, as you say, hopefully the roots will be so deep this time, political administration change won't make a difference.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Please.
Thank you. Regarding the employment terms of your assets, in the past, I recall from previous panels that the employment terms, or at least the tenors, were relatively short. What do you foresee going forward? Are the employment terms improving, or are the tenors lengthening beyond 2024, etc. months?
Go ahead.
I think what we see in general is that the utilities, they pool their projects together now to create larger chunk of work. Where the OEMs, the turbine OEMs used to be our main client, it's now more the developers less utilities because they're doing that. They want to secure capacity. We secured a 5-year contract last year. We're negotiating something that's longer than that, and we are also bidding as far out as 2039 at the moment. So I think it's fair to say that we are working on long contracts and also very far out in the future.
Yeah. Well, Jan de Nul just signed something with RWE.
Yeah, they just signed with RWE for 2 of their vessels, actually. Yeah.
So let's close. I'll give you each a minute. Optimistic or pessimistic about the offshore wind market and why? Start from the end, come work back.
I'm very optimistic about the offshore wind market. I think it's a great opportunity to bolster the energy needs of the U.S. in particular. That's where I'm focused, but globally as well. I don't think about it as an energy transition because I don't think we're ever going to get away from oil and gas. It's going to be our base. Wind turbines are not going to be our base load, but if we can use the offshore wind to supplement what we need, because the population is getting bigger, as Todd had mentioned earlier, that's where this is really going to start to take hold. So I think it's going to be great.
All right, Jose?
Yeah, I would agree with everything that's just said. I'm extremely optimistic. Obviously, there are challenges. There are going to be fits and spurts. There's, with the pandemic has come massive amounts of inflation and some recalibration of things from a cost standpoint. But I think those things will be very quickly behind us. And there's so much opportunity to apply technology, engineering talent, to continue to drive the economics of the business, and that's also going to create a lot of demand for everything that we do here on the panel. You saw the demand forecasts from Rystad. You've seen probably the forecast from Clarkson's that are even more ambitious and optimistic than that. And the world needs more sources of clean, reliable, stable sources of power, and wind is going to be, offshore wind is going to be one important component of many that will provide that solution.
Yeah, I'm also super positive. I hope that's clear from the conversation already. But I would like to say I hope that you guys are wrong in terms of your predictions on oil and gas, because I don't think the world can afford that scenario. So I think that we need to become more ambitious in terms of what we do. We talk about these 380 terawatt hours in current European planning. Just to free up shipping from their carbon footprint, we need 10,000 terawatt hours. So we're 9,620 behind. So I hope the world and the politicians become more ambitious, so there's also a planet out there for our future generations.
Thank you.
I think I'm extremely optimistic, and that's really driven by the fact that this is such a growth industry, and the need for offshore wind and the important part that it plays in energy transition and the enormous growth that's being announced in projects means that it's just going to be a great place to be in the next few years, and we see it expanding and continuing to expand.
All right, thanks very much. Thank you to the panel.
Thank you.